for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
I'm Katy Steele.
And I'm Jack Prince.
And we got quite a few topics to cover today. I really want to talk about the worshiping of rich people, and I think that's how we're going to start the show today. We also have an update to a story about a high school girl who was accused of hacking her homecoming queen election, and it's a crazy update. She's being charged as an adult. We'll talk about that in just a little bit here. Before we get started with today's show, a couple of reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can also follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com or at Stitcher.com by doing a search for Southpaws. You can find us on Apple Podcasts by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM-FM in Kabul, Missouri, and WOOL-FM, Bellows Falls, Vermont. And again, while I'm at it, I might as well make my pitch here. Please, if you can give your time and or your money to your local Pacifica station, they could always use it. So please help them out. Before we get started with today's topics, a couple of corrections from last week's episode. We talked about football, and at one point I mentioned the quote, "Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing." And I said it was George Halas. It was not. That quote is attributed to Vince Lombardi, but the actual quote came from Red Sanders of UCLA. So it's incorrectly attributed to Vince Lombardi, but it's definitely Red Sanders said that. And we had talked about Elon Musk last week. He wants 1 million people on Mars by the year 2050, not the moon. So we mentioned that as well. And speaking of Elon Musk, I want to get into the worship of rich people, because Elon Musk is going to be the guest host of Saturday Night Live on May 8th. And people are losing their minds over it one way or another, either positive or negative, very negative. Yeah, that's what happens when you put polarizing oligarchs on national television on a comedy sketch show. Why do we worship rich people?
Because they've designed it all. You know, they want the worship, they need it, and so they've designed a system where that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think of the only law that existed in Catalonia after they ran the wealthy and the churches out of the province, and the law was that it was illegal to bow down to anybody or even call them sir. You could not address somebody with sir.
I like that.
That was the law.
Wow.
They knew the problem with worshiping, whether it's a sports figure, a celebrity.
So they did away with all titles, all the way down to sir.
All titles.
Okay,
Yep.
That's huge. I was discussing titles recently and thinking a lot about that, how we do that. And, you know, that's how we assign gender to people before we even meet them. It's so important for us as humans to know somebody's gender before we even meet them, you know, and that to me is so strange, but it's all systematically developed in society, you know.
That is very true.
We did a sociology experiment in college. We had checks written, and we send in a student dressed slovenly with grease or whatever,
Okay.
And compared that to the person with a suit that would take the same check in.
Mm-hmm.
And guess which one constantly was cashed?
Yep.
And we'd get the same greeting with, ma'am or sir if they're dressed with a tie on. But a guy in a work shirt, not so much.
Yeah, and that's something my mom always talks about this. She says, we worship the wrong people in this country. We worship rich people. We worship athletes just because they can play a ball and they're millionaires.
Well,
But yet we don't worship people who are the ones who built this country, specifically organized building trades labor.
Yeah.
We don't recognize carpenters. We don't recognize iron workers. We don't recognize operating engineers. Those are all jobs that are beneath us.
I don't know that it's the money, though, that we're worshiping. It's the power. It's the power that these people have, the athletes and the celebrities and the money.
They
can have whatever they want,
but
right?
can you have one without the other?
No, and that's the thing. Money is power, but it's not. It's not the dollar bills or the wealth. Even I think that we worship. It's the level of power that they have that we don't.
I think power is the key word. I really do.
And the media just keeps going on with this. Here's an example of this from NBC News. This is dated April 30th. Dennis Romero writing. Here's the headline. Billionaire developer Eli Broad, patron of L.A. Arts, dies at 87. So they're not focusing on how this guy got his money. I was going to say earned. Earned is the wrong word because other people earned his money for him.
The article I read referred to him being like building his own wealth or something like that. And I went, he's a billionaire. That's not even possible. You cannot earn $1 billion. You can't do it. You're not that much better or smarter or stronger than anybody else that exists. You're just not.
Yeah. Eli Broad founded KB Home in 1957. In the 70s, he bought Sun America, which is a life insurance company. Mm-hmm. The guy earned it. The guy made this.
And life insurance is blackmail.
Other people's work.
It's blackmail. That's what, like, insurance in general is blackmail. We blackmail people for their lives, and we blackmail them to retain the wealth that they did earn. It's all blackmail, though.
Mm-hmm. But in the article, they talk about his donations that were they use the word legendary.
Oh,
and it makes me want to vomit.
Yeah, right.
$1.1 billion to establish the Broad Institute at Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And the $60 million to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. $30 million to rescue the city's Museum of Contemporary Art. $20 million for stem cell research at UCLA. Millions for public schools, $225 million to save the development of Disney Hall.
Okay, why are we saving developments and rescuing museums? And, like, why don't we use these words about people? Because words matter. All we talk about is the violence imposed,
exactly.
when people damage property. And now you want to talk about how property needs to be saved and rescued, but what about people?
Yeah, by the way, this guy has ties to Michigan. He went to Michigan State University.
Well, that's not a surprise. I mean, how many of these billionaires did? Because if you go back 100 years and you start looking at the millionaires of 100 years ago, they all went to the same college. It's just, it changes. It was U of M at one point. It was Harvard, Yale at one point. It's MSU now. Grand Valley, I really think, is in there, too.
Yeah.
What else is the media talking about this week? What was the big headline earlier this week?
Oh, that nobody wants to work anymore.
No, not that. No, besides that one. Bill and Melinda Gates are divorcing.
Yep.
Why should we care?
Thank you. I didn't think it was news.
Well, the Kardashians hit 20 years on TV now.
Which is 20 years too many.
Thank you.
You know, Horatio Alger, you talk about worship. Into our ethos, it goes back into the 20s where the predominant theme was Horatio Alger books. Now, Horatio Alger would constantly write different scenarios of people who started with nothing and then build it up into a kingdom.
Okay, an
empire. A powerful kingdom. And it was rocky on steroids economically, but it was written in the 20s.
Okay.
And then when I picked up The Godfather and opened the flyleaf, it said, no fortune has ever been built without an angle. And I thought about that. And I thought about how, if you think about it, everybody is given worship if they get an angle of how they're going to make lots of money. Instead of just rolling your sleeves up, it's the angle that really makes you special. If you're creative enough to figure out, like the guy that took a thousandth of a cent off on a computer that paid electric bills or whatever the hell it was.
The guy's trading up from a paperclip.
Yeah,
right?
There you go.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I was honestly thinking about that because I saw the paperclip thing, and I thought this guy had 26,000 followers on Instagram because he took a paperclip and traded it to something bigger and traded it to something bigger. Yeah. And, it's subjective whether you think what he traded it for is better or not, but that's why people are so like, this is so smart. Yeah. And I don't need anything. I can start with one of the tiniest things I have, and then I'm going to end up with a pontoon boat or a mansion or a new business.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really the hope and the inspiration and the encouragement that it could be you too. That's what sells people, and that I think is your ability to spread that type of inspiration is what makes you powerful.
We're facing here in West Michigan, in the shadow of the plutocrats, the DeVosses, these very same ingredients. Number one, they sat down in a garage, Horatio Alger-like, right?
Yep.
And they pitched an angle.
That's their story. That's their story,
yeah.
Yep.
And it was so wonderfully capitalistic, creative. It worked, and now they've got an empire. That's a dream of Americans.
And they're still launching the speech about their garage all over the world. I just watched 2 years ago, Doug DeVos giving an hour-long speech, and I can't remember which country he was in, but I watched it, and it was hard to watch. It was literally sickening. I was trying not to
probably somewhere in Asia, because Amway is huge in Asia.
I believe it was India, if I'm not mistaken, but it could have been Asia too, because they're huge in Asia. And is India in Asia?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm bad at that. The continents thing always screws me up.
See, and then the guy that joined the DeVosses, the Prince Fortune, no relation, he tried scheme after scheme. One of them was a boner that would take bones out of hams.
Oh my gosh!
Miserably,
a deboning machine.
And they're the ones that they made their fortune off of the rearview mirrors that came down.
They certainly did.
But they also invented the sidewalk melters. They are the ones they're all through Holland before they ever got put in Grand Rapids. But it was Eric Prince's father who invented that.
Because his wife Elsa wanted to walk to the restaurants and not slip
without having to shovel.
No, really, that's outside all the.
I believe it.
In the Blackwater book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do to stop you from slipping as you're walking to their yacht now that Betsy bit it. And if you haven't seen that video, you should Google it because it's great. She looks like a drowned rat. Oh, I have to actually finish a thought we were discussing last week. I brought up, maybe it was before the show. I can't remember if we were on air or not, but we were discussing Vanderlans because there are a couple of them running for office. And I realized the reason I know that name is because that is actually Dan DeVos's wife's maiden name. So that is why they are important in local politics.
Yeah. Power families gravitate toward power families.
Yep. Oligarchs stick together.
It's a big club and you ain't in it.
And the media will not give you the full story on these power families. The fact that Eric Prince had an affair with the house nanny while he was still married.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
You don't see that much.
He's on third wife
press
now, actually.
Yeah.
And the third wife, I don't even believe, is loving him so much these days. So,
yeah. So now Elon Musk, the guy that started Tesla, started SpaceX, is now going to be the guest host of Saturday Night Live on May 8th. And some of the cast members are not very happy about it. One cast member actually went to Twitter and posted a Bernie Sanders quote.
Good.
Where Bernie's just ripping on the top 50 wealthiest people in this country own more than half of the wealth.
We know their names.
Yeah.
This man came out recently and said the reason that he is not paying taxes and is accumulating and hoarding all of these resources is to get us all to Mars. It's because he is more responsible and brighter and more intelligent and apparently more superior to the rest of the human race. So he gets to decide where we go from here. He believes this. And we're all letting him, and we're putting him on Saturday Night Live.
I was just going to say, who's the one that gave him this power to just make this decision?
Apparently the bank.
Wow.
That's all I can come up with because they sure didn't ask any of us. And if you look up in the sky at night, there's a line of his satellites covering half the stars. So it's too late now for us to stop him.
And then, interestingly, Wall Street went to Christianity and said, you know what, we got to get out of this poor Jesus picture. We're having trouble. They did that, and we can't have him be a wimp anymore.
Right.
We want him more like John Wayne
or
Brad Pitt.
So in the future, those nativity signs are going to include AR-15s.
Seriously. They've got pictures on Facebook. Jesus with an assault rifle.
I believe it.
That'll be next.
Well, I mean, they've got a church on every military base. Did you know? And do you know?
And right next to that, next to the military base is the paycheck scam.
Do you know who supplies their furniture? This is great. To the churches at the military bases.
Who?
Hawthorne?
Tecton Woodworking. Tecton is the company, the tool company owned by Justin Amash.
Oh, lovely.
Nobody's ever put those two dots together, have they?
God. Yeah. So yeah, it's mind blowing. Just the people that are, Elon Musk, that's a good deal that he's going to be on Saturday Night Live. Pete Davidson, Michael Che, just both blowing smoke up his rear end. Oh, why wouldn't we have him on? He's the richest man on the planet. Who cares?
Can somebody just ask him what he plans on doing with the rest of the human population after he finishes bringing the ones that he wants to bring to Mars?
The 1 million that he wants to bring.
Yes. I just want to know what happens to everybody else. Do they stay here on Planet Prison? Because it's really looking that way.
Maybe he's bringing them to Planet Prison because they're going to have to get oxygen up there somehow. There's no oxygen on Mars.
Well, we're running out here if you see what's going on in India.
Tell me, if we were burning 570,000 carcasses in Main Street, United States, we'd have the same attitude about COVID.
I know. I just posted
They're running out of wood. They can't burn them fast enough.
There's a woman from New York who was quoted in the newspaper saying that she just can't believe that if there were white bodies piling up in the street like this, that something would not be done. Yeah. But we saw this. We saw this last year when empty hospital rooms were being piled up with black bodies.
When they
just a few counties away from us. You know?
When they were taking refrigerated semi-truck trailers and loading them with dead bodies.
And it wasn't here. It wasn't in Kent County. It wasn't the people we knew, but it was right there, right around the corner. And what could we do? What could any of us do? And that's where we're at now, except its entire country is full of...
I know.
Well, the worship, before we leave this topic of the wealthy, Darren, I don't know, I have an inclination to always go to the headwaters. And, back in the 60s, late 60s, there was this huge land shift away from poverty is a virtue, that being poor is next to godliness. And I can remember, not that I necessarily was that religious, where they finally figured out, kind of like Clinton figured out, well, the Democrats need the corporate money. The Christians realize, hell, we need the money. We have got to change the verses, the biblical verses, where the camel can't get to the eye of a needle, where blessed are the poor, right?
Words
they will inherit
matter.
Kingdom.
Words matter. They transitioned with using words, just a handful of words.
Exactly.
You can transition an entire thinking.
And now we have ministers saying they need a bigger jet. Who's the idiot that said, I can't get in a regular jet? That's like going into a tube of demons.
That was Creflo Dollar.
Look at the Catholic Charities buildings. I just can't get over it.
Creflo Dollar wanted a bigger jet. Kenneth Copeland wanted a bigger jet. I mean, you really have to narrow it down. Which one are we talking about here? Well, we talked a couple of years ago, the guy that bought his wife, what was it, a Porsche SUV?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's...
But I mean, that
was the first time you used the mustard and water phrase on me.
Oh. So you need to upchuck, right?
Yeah, if you need to upchuck, drink mustard and water.
But Calvinism, though, I think Calvinism is that transition in religion of going from poverty being a virtue to poverty being a sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Catholic religion used to have their priests whip themselves in the back and make vows of poverty. It was considered holy.
Wow.
And now it's considered flat out religiously stupid to... You talked about the Catholic Church. Do you know what their art museums are worth? Just their art museums. And if you get into the Vatican sometime, the wealth, the opulence, the gold reserve.
Wow. I hadn't thought about that.
Oh, the Catholic Church transported gold across the ocean in colony days.
I have a friend who lost a parent a couple of years ago and donated a gorgeous antique picture of Mary Magdalene and went back to the church, donated it
Sure.
to. Not there. Nobody knows where it is.
She wanted it
Just
back?
wanted to see it. Just wanted to see it. Not there. I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine. And it's a church.
Yeah, the saving the souls that they proclaimed, they actually drew a line and said this belongs to the Catholic Church across South America or someplace, and it had nothing to do with the souls because the souls were commissioned to dig out the gold.
Oh, wow.
They put a mask on their face because the Indians hated it so much they would eat dirt and kill themselves down in the mine.
Oh, my gosh.
So they devised it looked like a catcher mask so they couldn't kill themselves. But they didn't dig enough gold fast enough because of the heat.
Right.
They discovered that the African-American human being was much more durable with heat.
Efficient.
So you're going to make more money. Mm-hmm. Under the guise that we're going to the New World and save the heathen souls.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the more history I learn, the more atrocious it all gets. And I don't know if it's going back that's more atrocious or going forward because, we know now, and we still keep getting worse.
We know, we just don't care.
I think we do care, but we just continue to worship power. And when we just worship the power instead of dissembling it or finding a way to decentralize it, we end up in the same place every single time.
Mm-hmm. And we might as well stay with this a little bit longer. The offshoot of this is the demonization of poor people.
Yeah.
We're starting to finally see some pushback on this. There was the meme that's been going around social media of the Dollar General store that is closed because the workers got fed up and quit and locked the doors and said, we are temporarily closed because we're not getting paid enough to put up with your BS, basically.
Well, and the crazy part is this time is that this has happened before to where wages were so low that people didn't want to work. But the economists are saying right now that in normal situations, that's when they raise the wages because they need the employees. Well, we're in a point in oligarchy. We're in a late enough stage in oligarchy that they have enough power to starve us back to work. Mm-hmm. And they know it.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So that's what's happening right now. Everybody is finally seeing that if the workers come together, we have a level of power. Unfortunately, we're at our last stop. This is it. Like, we either do something with the sliver of power we have left, or this is it. Because they will starve us back to work. Mm-hmm. They will imprison us. They will make us do what we have to do because they have that level of power now. They can take us out if they need to. So we really have to be smart and start working together. And are you on unemployment right now? Can you manage to go get a job at McDonald's? Can you get off your unemployment? And not everybody can, but if you can, if you're in that situation, go get a job at McDonald's and organize. Do it. Don't do it for the paycheck. Do it so that you can organize those workers and so that you can make a difference there. Yeah. There are enough people that have the power to do that right now, but we all have to actually do it. We got to talk to each other outside of our cell phones. We got to make these decisions, and we got to go in and talk and empower our coworkers, the people that haven't been online watching this, that don't understand what's going on. Let them know we can work together and we can make change. We can make more money.
The problem is that we still have a bunch of people that don't want to work together. They're selfish. They only are thinking of themselves. So I've talked years ago on this show about the guy I went to high school with. He cuts meat for the local grocery store. He wants to rip on union workers because they're getting good benefits.
Oh.
Instead of ripping on them, I asked him, maybe you should be asking your employer why I'm not getting this. Why am I not getting the same thing that this guy is getting instead of tearing down your fellow worker?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what the unions have done to us because they have continued to incentivize the one leader at the top who, I just saw an article this week that said, union leader was leading a double life. Apparently, he had a taste for $8,000 bottles of wine in Napa Valley condos. I read this article and I went, I'm sorry, I don't even know a single person that doesn't have a taste for those things. Somebody clearly bribed the man to throw the workers under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's what happens every damn time. So, yeah, you're going to have half the workers that don't trust the unions.
It's true.
The other half of the unions are going to hate the people that don't trust the unions, and you're going to have everybody fighting. At the same time, the unions are stealing your money, throwing it to the guy that likes the $8,000 bottle of wine, and then taking favors from all the big companies to keep doing it. So don't go in and organize for the unions. Not today. It's too late for that. Go in and organize for yourself. Don't tell somebody to go pay anybody. Don't do that. Tell them we're not going to work tomorrow. If they want us to come in tomorrow, they got to pay us. You know where you should start? Start at the catering companies. The ones catering weddings that want to pay servers $10 an hour. Start with them, because you can go in and they have 8 people that are going to work a wedding that night. And if you get those 8 people to say, we're not doing it for less than 25, boom, you just doubled your money. You have power, because they are not going to cancel somebody's wedding.
Yeah,
the precepts of a union, nobody at this table would disagree with.
Right.
We love that.
Exactly.
The structure that's emanated now is
it's
just
working
after
against
corporations.
The
union negotiator sat across from these rich guys in the country clubs and suddenly realized, I see how they do it. And I can do it right in my organization. And they did it great.
And then they all went to the Democratic Party.
I told Darren the story. A union leader had me at the restaurant at the Rensen at the top.
Oh, wow.
And he's buying drinks for people and hors d'oeuvres. And I said, hold a second. Where the hell's this money coming from?
Right.
There's members back in Grand Rapids. I don't want to give too many names away.
Right.
That are on food stamps. And you're buying $15 scotch for me. I'm making $45,000 a year. It's ridiculous.
But they hope you're going to take it and throw your friends under the bus. And there's enough people that do that they keep getting away with it.
And you know why that's allowed? I can tell you why that's allowed. It's the one thing that my dad bitched and complained about when he was the vice president of the Carpenters Union in Grand Rapids. Nobody shows up to union meetings. He couldn't twist arms hard enough to get rank and file to show up at your local union meetings. Oh, we've got stewards. We'll let the stewards deal with it. No, a union is only as good as its rank and file membership.
That's absolutely true. And a union must operate from the grassroots
Yes.
up,
Absolutely.
not the other way around.
Otherwise, you're just prime for this.
We saw that with the teacher strikes in several states a couple of years ago, Jack.
The real strikes came from the bottom up. Or
Absolutely.
It didn't work otherwise.
Absolutely. And the ones that defied the union leadership are the ones that work the best.
See, I was raised in a union. My mother was vice president of Clark Equipment's union. I don't know if you ever see the floor scrapers.
Oh, okay.
Clark on top. They had factories in Benton Harbor, Jackson.
Oh, wow.
And I would go to the strikes and see the wood in the barrels. Christmas time, she'd take us to the Christmas party. That's where I got my winter coat. The union would hand that out. And my mother would say, this was back in the 60s. You know what's headed? They're going to try and take away your health coverage. She was fighting
your Social Security, your health coverage. They knew back
Yeah.
then.
And the president of the union, they should get the same winter jacket for their kids as the workers that go down to Jackson where we went and got it went on deaf ears. It fell on deaf ears.
And my dad was in tool and die. So it was that work of the unions that made sure my dad had benefits and a good salary. And, he graduated high school, went to tool and die shop, which the chemicals ended up killing him, but he made good money. He took vacations. His wife went to college. He had 2 kids in private school, and it was then when I was born in 1980 when the union sold out. And so I never got to see those benefits. My first job, there was no weekends off when I started working. There never has been. So that's why my generation doesn't get it. They don't see the value.
They don't see how it could work.
They didn't get the value,
Yeah. Well, one of the other memes that's been going around social media, and this just happened, I guess, within the last few days, is the Wadesboro, North Carolina Wendy's restaurant, where the entire staff walked out because apparently the district manager is a real ogre to work for. So they just walked.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
That's great.
But then we get people, like I said, that worship the rich. And I'll mention examples. I'm sorry, if you're on social media and you're spewing dumb shit, guess what? I'm going to call you out on it on national radio. You can take it up with the stations. So here's one argument. Somebody said, and this is a legitimate point, if minimum wage was higher than unemployment, they wouldn't have a problem finding workers. People are demanding to be paid more so they can afford to live, which is the truth. So then you get idiots like this John Perot over in Marshville, North Carolina, saying, then they need to get a job that actually requires a skill and pays accordingly. My 10-year-old could work at a fast food restaurant. If minimum wage goes up, so does the cost of living, so you're back to square one. Here's my response to John. Bullshit! Absolute, total bullshit. Because here's the truth, folks. In Australia, Burger King workers get paid more than U.S. workers, and guess what? The Whopper's cheaper in Australia than it is in the good old U.S. of A. Right there, bullshit.
I just want to say that most of us at this point have had at least one job in fast food.
Oh, I sure have.
And we already know no 10-year-old could do it. My 15-year-old butt sure couldn't do it. I was no good at it. At 30, I probably still wouldn't be good at it because it's hard. It's one of the hardest jobs you can have. Mm-hmm. And I found in my life, the harder you work, the less money you make. As you start to go up the economic job chain, as you start excelling and getting experience, you work less hard, you get better hours, and you make more money. It makes no sense.
Exactly right.
None at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that want to say, oh, flipping burgers is an unskilled job, I tell you what. Put me in the kitchen, untrained, and let me flip your burgers. Because I don't know a thing about how cross-contamination works. Let's see how long you live after you chew a couple of bites off of a burger I make for you.
I remember my dad gave me a union card to be a bartender.
Oh, nice.
I was in college, and I thought I was in pretty good shape. So the Brighton Ski Lodge found out, said, do you want to work New Year's? I go behind the bar. I feel fresh as a daisy. By 3 o'clock in the morning, I can barely walk out of the... And I'm a young man.
Yeah, it's a marathon. I mean, holidays in the restaurant industry, especially, I think now, as it continues to... They keep pushing more and more out of the employees. Well, up until COVID. That was actually a huge relief on service workers. But up until that moment, I mean, I was working... at the sushi lounge, at Juice Sushi Lounge, I was working regularly every Friday, 13 to 14-hour shifts. There was no break. There was no time to use the bathroom. Yeah. I would go 14 hours without using the bathroom. The unions, the stuff they won, we didn't get to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's hard work, Katy. I mean, people have no realization.
And I was lucky because it was good money, because at least I could work hard and make good money. There were people doing that for $10 an hour.
And my dad would go out. I saw him do this many times. I'm not supporting drinking, but he would stop in those days and buy a 6-pack at a liquor store, a convenience store that was $6, and leave a $20 bill tip. And I go, Dad, what are you doing? Or at a restaurant, he would leave these crazy tips because he knew how hard these people.
That's how it is. I can't leave a restaurant without tipping ridiculously well.
Yeah.
But I won't go if I can't do it because, I know their boss isn't paying them.
Of course not. It's
what is the wage?
It's still $260. No, $315. $315 now.
$315 in Michigan. I believe it's still $213 federally.
It was $260. Oh, really? $213 federally. Okay, it was $265 in Michigan before it went up to $315, and that was like a 30-year thing before it raised again. Those 50 cents or whatever.
Yeah, Minimum wage is $9.65 in Michigan, by the way, versus $7.25 federally.
And I'm still totally for keeping the tipped scale because I believe that's the only way I would have been able to raise my kids. Yeah. I don't think if it had been an hourly wage, I would have done better.
Right.
Yeah. Another meme that's been going around is one. It's a guy that he says he builds power lines for a living. He makes a good union wage. If a bunch of burger flippers started earning the same wages and benefits that I make, dude, I'd be celebrating with them and their families. Working people are my people. Their win is my win. This is the type of attitude we need in this country.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
Instead, we get guys like Thomas Fry out of Reno, Nevada. If there's no benefit to excellence and achievement, why would anybody try to better themselves?
That's the problem.
Taking care of each other is just overrated. It's really about taking care of yourself. That's the problem, is that people don't.
It definitely is. Yep, that's the Republican view.
There was the meme
I got mine
shared this morning, and it's got a photo of a Native American on it. And I don't know that it's a true quote or not, but I know that the spirit of it is accurate. And it just says, before our white brothers came to civilize us, we had no jails. Therefore, we had no criminals. We had no locks or keys, and so we had no thieves. If a man was so poor that he had no horse, teepee, or blanket, someone gave him those things. We were too uncivilized to set much value on personal belongings. We wanted to have things only in order to give them away. We had no money, and therefore a man's worth couldn't be measured by it.
Mm-hmm. That's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
It's all of it. Like, what are we doing? What matters? Ultimately, what matters to you when you're at the end of the road, when it's your last day? Mm-hmm. What are you going to care about? Because I've thought about this a lot, and I already know it's my people. It's the people I love, the people that have loved me. That's what matters to me.
Yeah.
Not what I have or what I've ever had. It's going to be how much have I given away, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I thought that was the whole Christian ethic that this country. I know it's a hoax.
Not anymore.
Who was it? In the great, was it Wall Street movie where Michael
Douglas?
Yeah, comes out and goes, "Greed is good." Then the Material Girl song hit. There was like a fever that hit the country.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened was there was a meme. Speaking of memes in Hollywood, where the woman would fall in love with the guy with the charisma and with the honor over the millionaire. The classic of that was The Graduate.
There were a ton of movies I grew up with morals.
Yeah. Right. And on a dime, it turned. They claim one of the movies was the one where the parents leave for the weekend.
Home Alone?
Home Alone. Is that where he dances across the scene in his underwear?
Yes.
No. Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
No,
not Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It was Risky Business.
Risky Business, yes.
Oh, okay.
So what do they do to raise money? They have parties at the house and charge money. And there's people hanging out the windows and everything.
Right.
And he just gets the house cleaned out in time when they get back. Remember?
Yeah.
So, and the message there, they say they actually planned that as a counter movie to The Graduate. Because The Graduate was sweeping young 15-year-olds off their heart, saying, that's what I'm looking for. I'm falling in love with the guy who is a good man.
Right. And they're like, no, but this guy's really cool, and he's not going to get caught.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. And in front of our very cultural eyes, the religionists, Hollywood, of course, the corporations, have put this ethos, this very... You want to talk about cancer and culture? We need a cancer culture.
Yes.
Today.
I got another one, though. I just saw it yesterday, and I never considered this. Batman. Mm-hmm. Okay, Batman. It had the Mr. Freeze guy. It had a picture of Ivy. Yeah. And it said that she was, like, wanting to grow new trees and help the earth. And then the Freeze guy wanted to cool the atmosphere.
Right.
But they wanted us to root for the trust fund billionaire, Bruce Wayne. And we did.
Go.
We did. And what did he do? He could never kill the Joker. Mm-hmm. He could never actually kill his only moral was not being able to take out the bad guy.
Exactly.
And that's what we grew up thinking was heroic. And I never considered that until yesterday when I saw it all in one picture and I went, oh wow, I'm really we're just led by them. We're just fed. Ugh. And what are the two animals that the Christians use to portray their followers? Sheep. And fish. The two most easily controlled animals, right? Oh, my God.
You hook them, you got them.
I never even thought of that either. That's funny.
Hooked them in a literal sense.
Yeah, in a literal sense. Oh, exactly.
The other one I heard yesterday was The Wizard of Oz. That's another really predictive one. If you look at the Emerald City, it's like I can't remember the exact analogy I'm going for, but they've got the lion, which is like supposedly Wall Street.
Yep.
They've got the straw man, which is all of us with our empty brains just following. So many different analogies in that movie, too, though, are very predictive of where we're going here.
Yeah.
They own us.
And once again, this Thomas Fry. Anyone can flip a burger. No education or experience needed. He's talking about him being a welder. He's trained and educated. Well, I guess, you know what? You got to be trained and educated to flip a burger too there, buddy.
Yeah, and most of our welders right now are doing the job of the oligarchs, and they're welding a bunch of infrastructure together that they're not going to be able to use. So thanks, dude. Good job. You went and fixed all those water pipes so nobody's going to get water. Appreciate it.
He then continues, the point is that minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. About 5% of the workforce are working for minimum wage. I'd love to know where he gets these figures from.
It wasn't the guy who set minimum wage.
Because I can tell you that 5% is bullshit. It's a lot higher. Let me just tell you. Because I sure ain't seen it around West Michigan. Nice chunk of those are high school students. Oh, really?
I'm so tired.
When I show up at McDonald's at noon, I don't see high school students helping me. I see people in their 60s and 70s working behind the counter.
Oh, yeah. It's mostly middle-aged people. They've done plenty of studies that minimum wage workers are middle-aged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working 3 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't continue with this because I'll blow up at him.
Isn't his last name somebody who is one of the big bankers in town?
Yeah, spelled differently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, and I'm amazed that we have all of this talk about democracy, right? There is no economic democracy talk, even in the history of our country.
Wow.
Democracy was always thought of as your right to carry a gun, right?
Your right to vote.
Your freedom, free to be dumb, which Darren and I have
you've coined.
Together we've coined that. But there was never any talk about having the same economic ability and rights.
Right.
It was always in another genre of democracy. They still, FDR tried to get out an economic, you have a right to have enough money to live comfortably, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And it went no place.
And they took MLK out the second he started the Poor People's Campaign.
Right. Did they have a manifesto? Did they even have an economic democratic...
I don't think so.
You know, like you have the right for clean water.
Right.
You have the right
for health care. For anything. No, I don't think so. I mean,
if it had ever been established, the Republicans couldn't puke all over the idea of health care.
Exactly. But even if they were they might establish it within the Democratic Party. It will never make it out of the Democratic Party because you're going to have Blue Cross Blue Shield in there. You're going to have Priority Health in there. You're going to have all those people in there going, no, it's not a right. It's our right to be rich. It's our right
was
to profit.
there actually an economic bill of rights? I've heard there was.
I've heard people drafting them.
But it's never been in existence that I know.
I've got the video and audio. January 11th, 1944, FDR radio address. Here it is, folks.
In our day, certain economic proofs have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living, the right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, the right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world.
Yeah, and that is definitely the truth.
Whoa.
It never happened because FDR died before the war ended.
But where did this go? Why did we not pull this speech out 5 years ago? At least 5 years ago, when Bernie Sanders was going around the country. Why was this audio right here is
exactly
what both sides needed to hear, because that pulls together everything we've been working on.
See, they've edited this part of the history. He's a historical character. He's a president of the United States.
Right.
This somehow doesn't get into the bio.
They're going to put that on the 5th page of Google unless you specifically go look for it.
It's like Martin Luther King. All you hear every year is his I Have a Dream speech. You don't get the speech where he says, in Vietnam, we're committing crimes.
Right.
We don't get that every year.
Exactly. If you look at even the Declaration of Independence, the parts that they cite, they talk about how you have a right to this, this, and this. But when they talk about addressing the grievances, if you don't, that's gone.
That's
you don't
right.
ever hear them repeat that part.
That's exactly right.
And where did all this stuff go? Well, when the war was over, this is what we did with Germany and with Japan. They got all of it, and we got nothing. Why? Because I'll tell you which party it was. It wasn't the Democrats. It was the Republicans that put the foot down on that.
Yeah.
That's why we don't have it.
Yeah, they're definitely to blame for a lot of things, but at this point, the Democrats are right up there with them.
Absolutely, because they're filled with former Republicans.
And that's
even history. Now, I think that declaration is in Zinn's book, Howard Zinn book. I think.
I'm going to transcribe it, and I'm going to share that audio. Is there video with it, or is it just
There
audio?
is video. It's on YouTube.
Okay,
It's easy to find. FDR's Second Bill of
I'm going
Rights.
to screen grab that and share it. And so I've been thinking also about an idea for a new book, but we need to start naming these rights, going directly for those things: right to healthcare, right to housing, right to food, right to farming.
Yeah.
And then we need to start naming the people that are stopping us. Like, I'm not just going to name you. I'm going to post your address, what you drive, where your kids go to school.
Yeah.
You're coming for my children. People are going to know where to find yours. I'm over it.
Instead of taking your field trip with your 8th grade students to see Detroit Lions football game, take them down to the murals downtown Detroit, where Rivero, I think is his name, the socialist artist.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And put this plaque of rights on the damn wall.
Right.
But we're not seeing those things.
No, we're not seeing any of those things.
As a matter of fact, now they're talking about changing the history away from the fact, unless I'm mistaken, that there was anything bad in slavery. It's good. The Republicans had a stellar week of changing history, the basic history.
Yep.
And now it includes the 5/3 doctrine that the black was worth.
Yeah, 3/5.
That they were less than a human being.
Now they're going to wrap that with wrapping paper.
And this is what they're doing as they're stripping us of humanity, though. You know, they start with they're stripping babies out of parents' hands. They're making us watch it over and over and over. It's been years they've locked these kids up in prisons, that they've given them away to other families. They're shipping them all over the country, and nobody's doing anything about it. So now the sanctity of the family is, if you're brown, it's not there. And once they take these things and just apply them enough to where it's a visual thing, and we get used to that level of depravity,
Hardened to it. Exactly.
It keeps sliding down the scale until we're going to end up where Nazi Germany was. Yeah.
You know, that's where I met you, Katy. First time I ever met you. I think you forgot.
No, I was actually discussing this the other day, and I was shocked when I thought about it. Because I didn't. Yeah. I had to go back and go, how did I meet Jack? Yep, it was Bethany Christian. You were reporting. And that I remember reading the article that
Seems
they
like
had.
a long time ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But nothing's gotten better with.
Nope. They had, I think, 80 or 60 kids at that point. And that was 2 years ago.
What was that, 30,000 pop, right? I mean, that's good money.
Yep, that
was
what the director said. $30,000 just if they adopt them. And all we've seen is ads and ads and ads for these foster to adoption programs, and how they need help, and how, just join their program if you're a struggling parent. We're here to help. Don't do it. They'll take your baby.
You're damn right. And we traced, I think it was your research, that found it was a DeVos person that was in Bethany, was a key figure.
Betsy was on the board.
That's pretty key.
Betsy was on the board of Bethany.
Yeah. You mentioned locking up children. We might as well get to this next story here. This is the Associated Press out of Pensacola, Florida. This is an update. We told you about a high school student who, with the help of her mother, who was I believe a teacher or a principal at an elementary school, hacked into the high school computer system and started rigging the votes for homecoming queen. We have an update to this. This is Pensacola, Florida. A Florida teen accused of rigging a homecoming queen election with her mother is being charged as an adult, prosecutors said. Emily Rose Grover was still 17 when she was arrested in March. She turned 18 in April, and the state attorney's office in Escambia County confirmed Tuesday that Grover will be tried as an adult. Over a homecoming queen election, folks. Yep, let's get the big crimes out of the way, like rigging the school elections.
My first question, honestly, my first question that comes to mind is, which cop's daughter didn't win? Guarantee you, one of those girls was a cop's daughter and really wanted to win.
Question.
Grover and her mother, 50-year-old Laura Rose Carroll, face multiple felony charges stemming from the October homecoming vote at Tate High School in Pensacola. While employed as an assistant principal at Bellevue Elementary School in the same county, Carroll accessed the school district's internal system to cast fraudulent votes for her daughter so that she would win. The investigation began in November when the Escambia County School District reported unauthorized access into hundreds of student accounts. That's according to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Investigators found that in October, hundreds of votes for the school's homecoming court were flagged as fraudulent. There were 117 votes from the same IP address within a short amount of time. That's when investigators found evidence of unauthorized access to the system linked to Carroll's cell phone and computers at her home. There were 246 votes cast for homecoming court from those devices. Oh, God. So for this, we're going to take a 17-year-old girl, and we're going 17 at the time that this occurred, at the time of the arrest, and we're going to prosecute her as an adult for multiple felony charges.
What is the charge for an adult rigging the homecoming?
Here are the charges. Here are the charges. Offenses against users of computers, computer systems, computer networks, and electronic devices.
Whoa.
Unlawful use of a two-way communications device, criminal use of personally identifiable information, and conspiracy to commit those crimes.
That is the most broad set of charges I have ever heard in my life.
By the way, both the mother and the daughter each face a maximum 16-year prison sentence.
I'm like so mind blown by how vague those charges are, because we were just discussing you can get into a car and your phone automatically connects to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So criminally using a computer or unlawfully, if you can use a computer without actually doing it on purpose, then you can pretty much be charged for doing absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah. You know, these people that tracked down this crime, they needed the people out in Arizona now that are looking for voter fraud. They're going through the ballots looking for bamboo on the ballot. Because, see, supposedly a huge shipment of votes came through from Asia. So, honest to God, I'm not making this up.
So there must be bamboo on the
ballot. So let the cheerleading crew get these sleuths, these super sleuths, right?
If there's no bamboo, you're full of poo. Hey, there you go.
Hey, it must be late in the show. We're laughing, right? We got to laugh.
But here's the thing, and Katy, you and I talked about this before we started recording. This girl, again, 17 at the time that she was originally arrested, is going to get felony charges.
Yeah.
Yet Brock Turner, who raped an unconscious woman behind a dumpster at a fraternity party, we can't prosecute him too bad because that'll ruin his reputation forever.
He made a mistake. It was a mistake, just like Brian Posthumous made a mistake.
Oh, God. Hang on a second. So Brock Turner gets 6 months, serves 3, he's out. Yeah. This girl, again, for rigging a homecoming election, faces 16 years. Now, you had mentioned Brian Posthumous. For those of you outside of the West Michigan area, Brian Posthumous is a local state legislator who just got in trouble recently for allegedly drunk driving.
His sister is currently the Kent County clerk.
Absolutely. We've talked about his sister on this show.
Second drunk driving charge.
Lisa Posthumous Lyons, who's also a former state legislator. She was the one, if you go back into our archives back in 2013, when she was talking about teachers, she was the one that got on the floor and said, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
Yeah, for that, she won Douchebag of the Week on this show. I believe she's a multiple-time winner. So, Right
her
there
dad
you
is
go.
posthumous, right?
And her dad is Dick Posthumous, the former lieutenant governor of this state.
Oh, my gosh.
And didn't they come from a funeral family? Because there used to be signs in Grand Rapids at funeral parlors called posthumous. And I said,
Really?
wait a minute. Could you get a worse name for
I'll have to check on that.
any name,
hilarious.
even if they weren't from the funeral industry?
Right,
Your last name is
right.
posthumous.
Posthumous.
Dr. Death.
It's
That literally
posthumous.
means after death.
Whoa, cat.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, this is where we're at. Well, this is how society is so screwed up right now. A 17-year-old girl at the time that this happened faces 16 years in prison, and Brock Turner, who raped a woman, an unconscious woman, gets 6 months. He's out in 3.
And why do we have juvenile court? Why do we have a juvenile system if you're going to handpick who you want to treat like an adult and who you want to treat like a kid? Yeah. I studied this. I did a research project on it in college, and kids' brains are not fully developed until their mid-20s. That's why we have a juvenile system. They based it on the science that children were not fully developed. So you don't get to decide that this one is or that one is not based on whether or not you like them or what gender or color they are. It's crazy.
I'll give you the argument that most adults aren't fully developed mentally either, so there you go.
Slightly stunted.
Oh, God. Well, before we started recording this episode, we received news from the Associated Press. A federal grand jury has indicted the 4 Minneapolis police officers who basically murdered George Floyd, in my opinion, one convicted of murder. The 4 officers are now facing federal civil rights charges. So this is good news. Derek Chauvin, Thomas Lane, Jay Kueng, and Tu Tao are all getting charged in George Floyd's death at the federal level. Chauvin, Tao, and Kueng are charged with violating Floyd's right to be free from unreasonable seizure and excessive force. All 4 officers are charged for their failure to provide him with medical care. Chauvin was also charged in a second indictment stemming from the arrest and neck restraint of a 14-year-old boy in 2017.
Surprise.
So
yeah,
they're
not his
getting
first
him
rodeo.
big time.
Yeah.
This is good. This is a start.
So my fear now, and I was excited to hear this originally, but my fear now is what's the court look like?
Yeah.
Because if this doesn't get the right decision, this is very, very bad.
Yeah, it is.
Exactly. And one last thing I want to get to before we get done with today. Have you seen Pfizer? Looks like they're going for full approval now for the vaccine.
Yeah.
And they've got 12 to 15-year-olds almost approved, supposedly.
Yeah, for emergency use for that age. So you think we're turning the corner on this finally, or are we going to have to wait a little bit longer?
It's encouraging, in spite of the rampant stupidity that walks the streets in the United States. You have to thank the preponderance of vaccination.
I'm real concerned about the variant in India, though, and whether or not our vaccine is going to hold up.
They've spotted it here in Michigan, haven't they?
Yeah, it's already been found in, I believe, Clinton County, Michigan.
So do they have any more knowledge on whether or not the vaccine is going to stop it? Because it's so out of control there that if we...
Yeah. I think they're getting to that point. Supposedly Moderna has a booster shot that also takes care of all the variants. So
okay, so there's hope.
We will see in the next few weeks and months what happens there. Folks, we are out of time for this week. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele.
And I'm Jack Prince.
For Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.